Kaguya-Sama has what I think is the perfect anime adaptation, and not for the reasons you may think. For most people, a perfect adaptation is a faithful adaptation, with any and all deviations of the source material being hugely berated and memed.
Aren't you put your name in a goblet of fire? Dumbledore asked calmly.
But Kaguya-Sama is different. Kaguya-Sama is a better adaptation because of what it changes, and that's not because the manga is bad. So how does it do it? How does A1 Pictures adapt a beloved manga and have the changes it makes be beloved as well? Shinichi Omata, the director, makes use of the medium of anime with his adaptation. The man has worked in the anime industry for nearly 30 years now, and it shows. He's worked on anime like Rakugo Shinju, Madoka Magica, and other delightful works of art. With most adaptations, albeit usually from novels, you will undoubtedly run into the phrase, "the original was better," in any long-form discussion about it. This is seemingly a rule which governs this universe. The reason for this is usually detail. A book can have more detail than a movie or a TV show can. The draw of watching a movie adaptation is that it allows you to visually see the things you've read. Big set pieces essentially. These two things are really hard to get right because a lack of budget could make the set pieces look bad, or the characters could be badly cast, or the cast as a whole could just be badly directed, leading to characters who share the same name as the ones you've read from a book, but are completely different. Kaguya-Sama luckily has neither of these problems. All of the voices fit their respective characters, and they always speak in a way which shows an understanding of the tone of the subtext and elevates it. It also looks incredible, but I'm sure part of that is just down to Kaguya-Sama being a manga first, so they already had that baseline there for how the show would look. Most anime adaptations stop here. They get the good casting and they make the show look pretty. But Shinichi Omata didn't just make the show look pretty, he made Kaguya-Sama a visually interesting show to watch. I'm sure that experience comes from all the fucking hentai. Most of the skits take place in the student council room. If the anime just had standard shots and angles, the show would get very samey very quickly. And this is where the first big improvement comes in: visual metaphors. As part of the mind games, the setting and the lighting changes drastically. As we follow Kaguya's or Shiragane's thought process, a game of 20 questions turns into a Wild West shootout, with the questions being the bullets. But that's not all. Visual metaphors and the use of movement, which you can only get in TV or film, is also used for the punchlines, to make them hit harder than they would if it was just a copy-paste of manga panels to anime. I think the reason this is used is to help with pacing. If you read a manga, you control the pacing. You read it at the rate to make the punches hit as fast or slow as they do. And I would argue the anime goes above and beyond with making their punchlines seem crazier, so they hit harder to account for the manga readers who are used to these skits being presented in a certain way. It throws them off, but I think that makes it funnier. Obviously just solely relying on this would get samey as well, so the anime also likes to do things like make references. I can't believe they made Twitter into a real thing from Kaguya-Sama Wants to Be Confessed To. Be it to other anime or wider media, a great way to keep an audience engaged is by making them do this. It's something I've learned when I edit. You can't do original things every moment of a video. Sometimes you just need something to keep the pacing and that will keep the audience entertained, be that with references, or maybe putting in music so you can get to the next idea. Speaking of music, anime can add one more element than moving images. Audio. The music, sound effects, voice acting all go above and beyond. The sound effects serve a similar purpose to the second type of visual metaphors. They serve to make a punchline hit harder. The OST does what any good OST does. Dials up the emotion the scene is trying to convey to 11. You need music to highlight the panic Shirogane and Kaguya feel? Here you go. You need a tune that shows the innocence of the characters? We have that in spades. You want music which perfectly exemplifies Ishigami's deep-seated depression and dark spiraling thoughts? Can I say it? Am I brave enough? I'm gonna say it. I think Spy Family really didn't do a good job in this regard. This was mainly a problem for me in the first episode, but stuff like this, and every instance of this, I was expecting an equally dramatic noise to accompany it. The music was good, but I already expected the whole "this is spy music." I honestly think Kaguya-Sama spoiled me on that and raised the bar for all future adaptations I watch. Even those as high quality as Spy Family, because it's still a great show, and I think they did a stellar job with extrapolating the castle story when Anya was accepted into Eden Academy. I do like Spy Family, okay? Now, I've only spoken about what A1 Pictures has added, and not what they've taken away. Why would they take anything away, you may ask? In a word, pacing. Something I've heard the YouTuber Glass Reflection say time and time again without really understanding is that when he watches the second season of a show, he wants there to be some form of progression to what was happening in the events of season 1. I've always thought this was a tad unfair to the anime adaptations where the manga didn't have defining arcs, or when a manga might progress in the span of 18 episodes instead of the usual 12 to 13. I also wonder if he thinks it's okay for a 24 episode anime adaptation to not progress, but not okay for two 12 episode seasons of an anime adaptation to also not progress. But then I realised how the Kaguya-Sama anime structures itself and how that makes it better. Season 1 defines itself as Kaguya and Shirogane playing mind games on one another to trap the other into a confession so that they will be the submissive one in the relationship. Kaguya wishes to be the dominant one due to her Shinomiya pedigree, while Shirogane wants to be the dominant one out of pride of being the man in the relationship, and his inferiority complex of that he'll never be Kaguya's equal if he confesses to her first. Season 2 is also about the mind games, but Kaguya and Shirogane's feelings for one another constantly get in the way of their machinations, causing them to stumble out of the nervousness at the most important part. The progress is their development of their feelings. In the third season, there are barely any mind games, just an honest desire to have the other fall in love with them and make the most, and I mean the most grandiose of gestures to show their feelings to the other. To make this work, chapters were cut from each season, partly just to make each season end with a bang. Now, the timeline isn't the most important thing at the beginning of the manga, so for the adaptation they could have easily just moved some of the hype chapters forward to mark off each season and then carry on with what they missed for the next season. But they don't, and I think that really helps with keeping the momentum of progress going. Most, if not all, of Kaguya-Sama's chapters are great. A1 could adapt all of them, and none of them would lower the quality of the series. You could replace some of the adapted chapters with non-adapted ones, and the show would be just as good. So why not adapt every chapter to have more of the anime? Because the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Having a clear focus for each season makes the season itself better. If they didn't pick and choose to fit the schedule of the 12 episodes, then each season would just be 12 great episodes of Kaguya-Sama, not a great season of Kaguya-Sama. Earlier I said something. Now, the timeline isn't the most important thing at the beginning of the manga, and that's important to my next point. I spoke about how the Kaguya-Sama anime makes itself better with its adaptation, but there is one part I think they stumbled really hard on. In season 2, Kaguya's and Ishigami's relationship reaches a turning point, from where Kaguya thinks Ishigami is a pathetic little bug man, and Ishigami is terrified by Kaguya, into a relationship where they are just the bestest of friends, the chummiest of chums. The way this played out was that Ishigami inadvertently saved Kaguya from being forced into a confession by Shirogane after his birthday, to which she felt genuine indebtedness to. Then, during the following exam season, she tutored Ishigami because of this feeling of indebtedness. In the anime, this exam season was combined with the previous one so they could be a full episode centered around the exams. But because of this, anime Kaguya hadn't been saved by Ishigami yet and didn't feel this indebtedness, but instead helped Ishigami because which I think is a huge disservice to Kaguya's character. In the manga, she helped Ishigami as it is the Shinomiya way to repay debts, to keep her promise that she made to herself to pay him back, a promise that Ishigami had no idea about. This is a core trait of Kaguya's, which Shirogane fell in love with. But in the anime, she helps Ishigami solely for Shirogane, solely for Miyuki, which just makes her much less autonomous as a character and not give her a personality outside of Miyuki. From this point as well, Kaguya treats Ishigami a lot more nicely, partly because he keeps subverting her expectations until they get to the point of genuine friendship. And because the anime doesn't have this starting point and then backtracks a bit, the progression and nuance of their relationship is just lost. So when we see the moments that these two are close, they make for nice scenes, but not a nice story. Would just be 12 great episodes of Kaguya-Sama, not a great season of Kaguya-Sama. All in all, this is the only choice I think the anime made which made it an objectively worse experience, and not a different one, unlike all the other choices they've made which have just made it a different experience. I understand why it was done, but I don't think it was worth it. But hey, nothing can be perfect. Outside of this, I think Kaguya-Sama Wants to Be Confessed To is worthwhile being experienced through both the anime and the manga. The anime for seeing the characters come to life, the insanely high production value, and the creative interpretation of the adapted chapters, while the manga promises more content and uses its medium to its greatest potential. If you've watched an original anime, you know everything has been designed with the constraints and flourishes of anime in mind, whereas an adaptation doesn't. And in some ways that just makes all adapted anime on the side of a losing battle. Hell, my favourite anime is an anime original. But the way A1 puts the medium of anime in the forefront of their adaptation puts them damn close. An adaptation should do more than just tell the same story. It should make the story a new home in the medium it is being told. That is what Kaguya-Sama has shown me, and I will always be grateful for being shown such an innovative way to adapt a story to screen.